Sidata Rang Kundu Kuragan Bet Yanga Grande Surwa, Hambala and some look and very stamina. Sida the pet cannot live the chick with the white. See another bet the Kemikure, the kid, a shoot hunting, doing this that who you me. Petang and the Shakol can't teach home and do Zita. The Kemian live the Chipurisha.
This video was taken by a Tibetan woman at Potala Palace in the capital Lhasa on the eve of centenary celebration of the Chinese Communist Party. The woman in the video is distressed about the holy Tibetan site altered for the benefit of the many Chinese tourists present. This is a grim reality today that is outnumbering and overwhelming Tibetans living in the capital from the massive influx of Chinese in Tibet. Let's talk about the current situation of tourism in Tibet and why we should be worried. How is tourism in Tibet just a money-making machine for the Communist Party of China? For Chinese government, tourism has become a tool of occupation since they forcefully entered Tibet 70 years ago in the name of development by building roads and electricity, mainly to pave themselves ways to reach Tibet. They have woken up to the financial value of Tibetan culture, marketing a romanticized version of Tibet, especially to the Chinese tourist market, where Tibetans themselves under the occupation have little to say in how their country is portrayed and gain little of tourism's financial benefits. Let's talk about the transportation, an important aspect of tourism in Tibet that played several different roles in the rise of civilization and also in national defense. For instance, the efficient utilization of roads helped the Roman Empire rule the ancient world. The good network of roads served two purposes for the Romans. During wars with neighboring kingdoms, it served for quick deployment of soldiers. On the other hand, the well-connected roads helped them send quick reinforcement and to crush rebellions in their conquered colonies. Like the Romans, the Communist Party of China has given utmost priority to infrastructure development. Almost immediately after the conquest of Tibet in 1951, the CCP began constructing highways that would link Tibet with China for the first time in history. Thus, with this step, all roads from Tibet led to Beijing. The Chamdo-Lhasa Highway and Tsongun-Lhasa Highway, constructed from 1954 to 1955, were two major routes connecting Tibet with the rest of China, which later became the CPC's modes of transportation and exploitation of everything for its own interest and not those of Tibet, the Tibetan people, and neighboring countries. By 1975, China had completed 91 highways totaling 15,800 kilometers with 300 permanent bridges in Outer Tibet alone, by which 97% of the region's counties were connected by road. Claude Arpi, a historian, journalist, and prolific commentator on India-Tibet-China affairs, says the infrastructure development by the CPC in Tibet has served a dual purpose. It helps the CPC to control Tibet effectively and also facilitates the People's Liberation Army's militarization of Tibet's borders. But beyond that, these roads and railways were also engineered for the mass migration of Chinese people in search of work and pleasure in Tibet.
In 2020, around 500,000 Tibetan people were taught in a military-style coercive, labor-intensive center across Tibet. And according to Dr. Andrew Chen, and I quote, "In the context of Beijing increasingly assimilatory policy, these policy will promote a long-term loss of Tibetan culture, linguistic, and spiritual heritage in the future." And I think with the rise of Chinese tourists inside Tibet, there will be a further establishment of these kind of military-style coercive center across Tibet.
For instance, the Tsongun-Lhasa Railway brought around 1.5 million passengers into Tibet during its first year of operation, ending on June 30, 2007. In its 13 years of operation, much has changed in socio-economic and the cultural landscapes of Tibet. Hence, under the guise of development, the CPC is committing what Rinzin Dochi, a former research fellow at the Tibet Policy Institute based in Dharamsala, calls urban-side. By these, he means the extinguishing of Tibetan culture and identity through an influx of millions of Chinese migrants to Tibet. This process is still being implemented.
Millions of Chinese migrating and settling in Tibet will downplay the Tibetan population or undermine the Tibetan populations. So this is the one aim of the Communist China, because they want to, the more the urbanization in Tibet, there will be less Tibetan in the Tibetan cities, so which will threaten the existence of Tibetan identity, Tibetan culture.
Last week, the Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Ningxi in Kongpo, a border town in Tibet, 17 kilometers away from India, to assess the first electrified railway line to Lhasa that operated last month. And according to city's Tourism Development Bureau, Ningxi already received 5.3 million Chinese domestic and foreign tourists, up by 10.89%, and the city is expected to see its tourism target exceed the goal of 10 million visitors by the end of this year. The Chinese government has already set the target of receiving 61 million tourists annually into Tibetan autonomous regions and aims to generate yearly tourism revenue of 64 billion yuan by 2025. To sustain the Chinese authoritarian machine's rule and to hide the harsh reality in Tibet, private and individual tours are near impossible. Any travel agency organizing group tour in Tibet cannot avail 100% independent tour in Tibet, particularly after the 2008 mass uprising across Tibet. The word Disneyfication is a synonym for the large-scale culture theme parks built in Lhasa designed to bring in tourists that eroded traditional Tibetan culture and the income that has economically benefited Han Chinese more than the Tibetans. The word itself means commercial transformation of things or environment into something simplified, controlled, and safe reminiscence of the Walt Disney brand. And in case of physical places, this involves replacing the real with an idealized tourist-friendly veneer. Much like the world's highest amusement park, Diki Nupu in Lhasa, and rest of the theme park are curated around Princess Wencheng, the 7th century niece of Tang Dynasty emperor who married the 33rd king of Tibet, Songtsen Gampo, whose tale has been embraced by Chinese authorities as a parable of ethnic harmony. Through this means, the Chinese government has made Tibet's sacred rite of sky burial, Chator, into a $5 show for Han Chinese tourists. Dozens of Chinese tourists gawked at the rituals and shared the recordings senselessly on social media. Taking the case of Geldang, after Chamto, Shikatse and Ningxi prefecture in Tibet Autonomous Region, China has upgraded the Geldang country in Dezhen Prefecture, Yunnan Province, as a city. China had changed the county's name from its Chinese name of Zhongde to Shangri-La in December 2001 in order to boost tourism, declaring it to be the real place the English writer James Hilton had named as Shangri-La in his 1933 fiction Lost Horizon. Similar imagination of the landscape of Shangri-La was assumed to be cited in a National Geographic article by botanist Joseph Roque, 1922-35. Dan Samuel Yu, professor at Yunnan Minzu University, in his work Mindscaping the Landscape of Tibet, Place, Memorability, Eco-Aesthetics, found Tibet, including Shangri-La, being transformed as an object of consumption for both Chinese and international tourists. Similar observation is advanced by Achille Collas, social anthropologist, in her book Tourism in Tibetan Culture in Transition, a place called Shangri-La. Revenues generated from the Geldang tourism recorded 80 million yuan in 1992, which increased to 1.8 billion yuan in 2008. Where these revenues go to? Villagers are drawn to tourism market with the simple hope that they could support their families and left their higher income of mushroom collection. Heavy revenues from Geldang tourism are shared among major outside investors. In Tibetan Buddhism, prayer wheels are devices for spreading spiritual blessings and well-being. 6 Mani Mantra and other holy Buddhist script texts are rolled on drum wheel. But in Geldang, the political slogans of China's top leader Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Jian Zemin and Hu Jintao are carved onto the giant prayer wheels with 21 meters height and 60 tons weight. These messages are Chinese government propaganda to win the loyalty of Tibetans to integrate with the broader Chinese national, using Tibetan Buddhist prayer wheel to spread the Chinese leaders' political thoughts is against the principle of Buddhism. So here comes the most important question. Why should we be concerned? The Chinese government has been implementing a double standard policy on Tibetan culture and language. For tourism, Tibetan culture and its traits are commodified. Chinese leaders' thoughts are carved on the Shangri-La's giant prayer wheel in Tibetan language. The same government curtailed the Tibetan language rights through which unique Tibetan culture can be preserved and flourished. What's more, tourism risks becoming insensitive voyeurism when local Tibetans are treated as an exotic curiosity and centuries-old customs are reduced to Disneyland-style attractions. Tourism in Tibet helps to legitimize China's rule and attempts to cover up the harsh reality of 7 decades of political and cultural repression.